What's going on, guys? MagDowan here with another farm strategy summary and review. Today we're going to be talking about Harbinger and Harvest in burial chambers. We will go over the Atlas passive tree. We'll talk about the way I've set everything up with compasses and scarabs and all of that. I'm going to talk a little bit about the way that I approach the strategy in map, and then we'll go over all of my scores for the strategy. So let's jump right into it. As always, this is just the way that I have things set up. By all means, there may be a more optimized version that will work better for your specific scenario. And there are certainly some things that you could move around, maybe some nodes that you would not take, and that is perfectly fine. This is just the way that I have set things up, and that works well for me. So we're going to come up into the middle here and grab shrine nodes, block everything here except for delirium. We're going to come down here and get harvest chance, harbinger nodes here, map nodes. We're going to be using Pact with Energy. I found this to be basically mandatory for the mid-geared Tornado Shot character that I am playing, at least as the League mechanic juice begins to ramp up. This has been very useful. Harbinger nodes there. Grab the big harvest cluster. We're going to come up here and grab more Harbinger nodes and more harvest nodes here. Some map nodes. We're going to come up and fill out the middle here with Harbinger, shrines, harvest, and then the map nodes at the top. And then we're going to swing over to this side. We're going to block everything except for harvest. Grab the last section of map nodes here. And then we're going to come over here and grab all of our Searing Exarch nodes. If I had the last 10 points, I would probably just grab more of the map modifier effect nodes here around the top hat. But other than that, that is essentially the tree. You may find that you don't need all of the map nodes. Maybe you already have a huge pool, but given that I will be switching to another strategy, I've just kind of left the map nodes on there so that I can favorite up the next map that I'm going to farm and continue to over-sustain as far as that goes. So, make your own choices, but this is the general setup that I have. Okay, as far as setting everything up here, we're going to do 8 mod corrupted maps, 40% pack size or better preferred. And then as far as compasses go, we're going to run a Gloom Shrine. We're going to run Harvest Duplication. And then Mysterious Harbinger. And then additional pack size and unidentified maps, which I've got quite a few of here. So I'll run those after I get through whichever 8 mod corrupted maps that are runnable I have. I've got some here that are a little bit more nasty. I'll either save those and run them with an easier strat, or I may end up just running them in the end, who knows. And then, of course, here I've just got other corrupted maps that are runnable but do not have as desirable pack size. And I will run those with the same strat when I run out of these or when I'm too lazy to roll more maps. And then on the map device, we are going to run, of course, our red altars. We'll throw Nico on there, and then you can do Fortune Favors the Brave or whatever if you want, but I will probably just run the standard quantity. Now, as far as my approach when I am actually in the map, we're going to, of course, open the map and run in. We'll trigger the Mirror of Delirium if it spawns, and we'll jump right into the League mechanic. I am aiming for as close to about 2,500 blue and maybe 1,500 yellow. That would be kind of the ideal setup if I can get it. A lot of times it ends up I just kind of run around and what I get is what I get. For my character and my comfort level with dealing with how crazy the juice is when it's applied to particularly the boss in the map and the harvest monsters, I find that anything over about 4K starts to get pretty stressful. And so we will jump into the League mechanic, and then we'll come out and just clear. Ideally, it would be nice if the harvest just always spawned right at the entrance to the map, because then I would say just immediately do the harvest and then trigger the League mechanic and do all of that, but that's just not reasonable to expect. That you're almost never going to get all of that stuff to spawn right at the beginning of the map. So I just do the League mechanic and then clear the rest of the map normally. Sometimes I will try and save all the shrines until the end and then grab them and either kill the boss and then go do the harvest, or the harvest and then the boss, depending on their positioning in the map. But I would say 8 out of 10 times it ends up, I just have to clear the map as I would normally, and when I encounter the harvest, I just do it. And then a few things to just kind of discuss. So, why am I not using the Sacred Grove compass? And in my experience, I am finding a Sacred Grove 3 out of 4 times very reliably. And in fact, in all of the time I've done the strategy, I never encountered more than one map at a time where the harvest did not spawn. And the profit was high enough that I did not feel like I needed to have that additional cost of the specific Sacred Grove compass. As far as the league mechanic and harvest, this is going to be 100% speculation. I don't have any hard data, but in my subjective experience, it feels like the mechanic does not actually affect the amount of life force that the mobs drop at all. And that may come down to the variance in how many of the good monsters you get on a plot and the variance with how much actual life force drops, et cetera, et cetera. But the league mechanic definitely juices the monsters. It just doesn't seem to me that you really get any more reward from it. So there is a really lopsided difficulty and risk versus reward situation going on there with harvest. I almost think that if you wanted to just farm straight up harvest, that you would probably ignore the league mechanic entirely, or as I said a few moments ago, if you were in a scenario where you could reliably just find the harvest and run that before you trigger the league mechanic and kill the rest of the stuff in the map, that would be the way to do it. But definitely for the current league, I am finding that harvest is less enjoyable than it has been in previous leagues because you really do feel like you have to go in and do the league mechanic to juice up the rest of the map. And then there's a lot of times where I ended up with, 1 or 2 harvest monsters that were just insane to try and beat down. Also, a few times I did actually encounter a harvest monster that was so juiced up and had such insane life regen that I straight up could do 0 damage. I could sit there for an hour and its health would not move, and either I would die or there would just be an endless stalemate. And that was actually pretty frustrating when it did occur. Luckily for me, it really only happened a couple times, and it was typically on the last plot. And so the amount of juice, life force that I was losing out on was not significant. But you could very well, if you're running a similar build to what I am, run in there and have the first plot, shit out one of these crazy rares that you literally can't kill, and then your entire harvest is bricked. And then the last thing, in terms of just general stuff to mention, I dropped quite a few fortunate cards, and that is definitely one of the primary, profit propositions for burial chambers. I didn't see any doctor drops in the 50, 60, something like that maps that I did. But obviously, you could have one of those drop, and then your profit would shoot through the roof. But as far as the fortunate cards go, I'm going to advise at this stage of the league that you hang on to them and just turn them in for the divine orbs. The amount that they sell for at the time of recording this video is 28 to 30C, and when I'm buying divine orbs right now, I'm paying 210 or so, and so people who are just buying the cards are actually getting a pretty good margin. So I guess I might also be advising you to now is the time to buy up the fortunate cards. And so those are the general notes that I wanted to bring up. And so let's jump over and we'll look at the card and talk about my scores a little bit and get into some other points about the strategy in a little bit more detail. All right, here are the scores for Harbinger Harvest Burial Chambers. For fun, I'm going to give it a 5.5. All the stuff I mentioned about not being able to complete the harvest before entering the league mechanic most of the time, and the way that the orbs, or whatever we're calling the league mechanic juice, the way that that interacts with the mobs in each harvest plot is really strange. And I don't know that it really affects the amount of life force that you get, but it certainly affects the buffness and the danger of the mobs. And so there was definitely some struggle to be had there, particularly if your character is at the mid-range of gearing. And then another point to make is I just don't like burial chambers as a map. I mentioned this in my previous video, but it drags the score down a little bit here. I have to be honest in terms of if you don't like burial chambers, doing this strategy is not going to change your mind. And so 5.5 for fun. As far as repeatability, a little bit higher at a 7. It is a strategy that was pretty easy to set up, and it is the kind of thing where, for the most part, you can kind of zone out. This league, each map is kind of accented at the beginning with a little bit of needing to pay attention. That's maybe my biggest criticism of the league, is that if you really just want true, full on open map, run forward, kill mobs, pick up loot, you can't really do that without losing out on what you would get from the league mechanic, having FOMO setting in. If you're going to do the league mechanic, you kind of have to sit forward a little bit and pay attention to what you're doing, at least for the first 30 seconds of the map. But the strategy was fairly easy to get going, and it is something that I didn't have a lot of trouble just doing the maps over and over. It was just the intermittent, periodic struggles that were had, particularly with the harvest and with the map boss, that dragged the score down a little bit on the fun. But 7 for repeatability. For scalability, I'm going to give it an 8. I probably should have talked about this earlier, but you could certainly run the blue altars instead of the red, and that's totally up to you. I just find that this league, combining everything else that's going on with all of the nastiness that you can get from clicking all of the quant altars, is not to my taste. And I find that having the influx of raw chaos and awakened sextants, etc., from the red altars has served me pretty well. And the red invitations are finally up to where they're selling for at least a div a piece. And so I'm happy to keep playing red altars. I don't feel like I'm hobbling myself by that choice, but you could certainly amp up your potential profit if your character is more powerful, or if you just don't care and you're going to run the blue altars no matter what. You might see some additional gains in that department. And then, of course, you could get into running all 8 mod maps that already have layers of delirium on them. You could run the harvest, the sacred grove compass, and maximize there, so you wouldn't have the periodic maps that did not have a harvest in them, things like that. So scalability, you could definitely go higher than what I went here. And of course, you could run gilded scarabs and so on and so forth. So 8 for scalability. For profit, 9. Great profit. I would say that I basically paid for probably 12 to 16 maps worth of materials in 2 maps with just the harvest juice that was dropping. It is worth noting that the price for particularly the blue life force, since I started the strategy just a couple days ago until now, the price has actually gotten worse as far as being the seller. And so I don't know if that trend is going to continue, but I was selling for right around 5.5K at the beginning, and now I think it's up closer to 6K per divine for the blue life force. And so some diminishing profits there. But when you combine the amount of life force that you're getting on average, I would say in the 8 mod corrupted maps, I was getting about 2 to 2.5K life force on average per harvest. For the unidentified corrupted maps with the compass for pack size, I would say it was closer to 1,500. And then if I was just running regular corrupted maps with 5 or 6 mods, maybe picking out the ones that are closer to 30 to 33 pack size, then I was getting around 1,000 to 1,200, 1,300 life force per harvest. So take that into account when you're deciding which types of maps you want to prioritize. It is definitely worth it to run the 8 mod corrupted maps. Those were very profitable in terms of harvest. And then you have to add in that you're getting all the fortunate drops. You have the general juice from the league mechanic that is amping things up. I had one map where I dropped a raw divine and then 2 of the Valdo's puzzle box things, which sold for multiple divines apiece. And then I had a really good harvest in that map. I think it had a boss. And so I ended up with, almost 3,000 life force. And things like that are not uncommon this league. And so the profit is there. And then, last thing to mention, of course, is you could get a doctor drop and then boost the profit through the roof. So 9 for profit, fantastic on that, no complaints. Efficiency, I'm going to give it a 7.5. You do have to go out and buy all the compasses. You do have to keep a stock of scarabs. And then there's all of the weirdness with Harvest interacting with the League mechanic that drag this score down a little bit. But I think 7.5 is a fair judgment there. It's not bad. It's not fantastic. It's certainly not as efficient as, just a straight up Al can go in a previous league where you didn't have to deal with the League mechanic. But given the current state of things, I would say it's right up there, the acceptable range. Nothing to write home about, but I didn't feel like the strategy required tons of out-of-map preparation and stress and anything like that. And so we have a combined score then of 7.4, perfectly acceptable. I enjoyed myself. I don't know if this is something I'm going to continue doing ad nauseum going forward, but if you enjoy Harvest, and particularly if you have a much more powerful character than I do, your scores could be a little bit higher, and you could find that this is a really enjoyable way to play the game right now. And that is basically all I've got for you guys today. I am glad to be back making this type of content. I will note, come early January, I am having some things change in my life. I'm going to be doing some more regular day job type stuff that is not the standard for my lifestyle, but it is what it is. And so I will have less time to play the game, and so I am trying to decide if I want to try and re-roll to another character and get a chance to try out some more of these transfigured gems, or if I just want to forge ahead and get 1 or 2 more of these farm strategy summary and review videos done before that time. And so a little bit of an open-ended future for the channel in the next few weeks and months. I'm not sure exactly how things are going to shape up for, creating content when I've only got, a couple hours a day to either play the game or produce videos, et cetera, et cetera. I won't bore you anymore with that, but that is what is in the future for the channel. And I hope that you found something interesting or engaging in the video. If you did, please do hit the like and subscribe button. It helps me out a lot. And I hope to see you in the next video. I appreciate you.